David Andrews now with us?
He is.
I certainly am. In the full sense of the definition.
Yeah, okay, I've got you, David. Thank you very much.
I believe we're live.
Oh, yeah, just waiting for confirmation so we can start the meeting.
Yes, we're live.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. This is a meeting of East Herts District Council's Development Management Committee. It's taking place on the 4th of November, 2020. The information pack, the papers are available on the East Herts District Council website. If you've not accessed that yet, they're all there and are fully available. And I think all I now need to do is just open up the agenda and start the agenda. So item 1 on the agenda is apologies. We have a couple of apologies. Councillor Fernando and Councillor Kay are unable to be with us, but they are being substituted for by Councillor Sally Newton and Councillor Ian Devonshire.
That's correct.
Thank you very much, Peter. In a minute, I'll introduce everybody involved in this meeting to the viewing public, but I just initially need to read out a short statement that explains to everybody the basis upon which we're conducting this meeting on a virtual basis. The local authorities and police and crime panels, coronavirus, flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales regulations 2020 came into force on Saturday, 4th April 2020 to enable councils to hold remote committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period. This was to ensure local authorities could conduct business during this current public health emergency. This meeting of the Development Management Committee is being held remotely under these regulations via the Zoom application and is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. I'd like to say right now to those of you who are viewing on YouTube that all of us involved in this meeting very much appreciate it. It's great to have the engagement and interest that you show to this important area of the council's activities. I'm now going to enable the members of the committee to make themselves known to the public. Just again, to set the scene for the public, most of the faces that you can see on the screen are councillors and are therefore members of this committee, and it's the members of the committee who get to vote. There are some people in this meeting who are not members of the committee, and I will do my best to make sure that that distinction is very clear to everybody before we start the business of the meeting. So my name is Bob Deering. I'm the chairman of the committee, and just like Tony Stowe, to show a hand to the screen, that's Councillor Tony Stowe. Councillor Stowe is the vice chairman of this committee. And then I'm going to take the councillors in the order they appear on the agenda paper. If Councillor David Andrews could show a hand to the screen, please. I think you're getting there, David. Well done. Thanks very much, David. Councillor Beckett. Thank you. Councillor Ruth Buckmaster. Thank you, Ruth. Councillor Ben Crystal. Councillor Sally Newton. Councillor Ian Devonshire. Councillor Ian Kemp. Thank you, Ian. Councillor Tim Page. Thanks, Tim. Councillor Carolyn Redfern. Thank you, Carolyn. Councillor Peter Ruffles. Thank you, Councillor Ruffles. Okay, so that's it. Now, in addition to the voting members, we also have one other councillor who will be present throughout this meeting, and that is Councillor Jan Goodeve. And Jan is the executive member for a brief that includes the Development Management Committee. So Jan has just put her hand to the screen. Jan does not have a vote at this committee, but she's quite correctly present for the meetings. We then have other officers who I'm just going to introduce in the order they happen to appear on my screen, and I appreciate that may not be the same order as appears on your screen. We have Peter Mannings, who is from Democratic Services. Peter hopefully will help me keep the show on the road and help me with counting the votes. We have Fiona Dunning. Fiona is a planning officer and will be presenting one of the items tonight. Then we have David Snell. David Snell is a senior planning officer and will be here to assist us as he always does. We have Sarah Saunders, who's the head of planning at East Herts District Council. Sarah's another officer. Then there is Elaine Bell. Elaine is a legal officer and is here to give us assistance if we need it from a legal perspective. Stephen King. You can certainly wave to us, Stephen, provided that doesn't affect your ability to keep the show on the road. Stephen is in effect the technician that runs this TV show for us. We're very grateful to you, Stephen. And I'm just going to mention one other name because I think you can all see it on your screen if you are watching on YouTube, and that is Councillor John Wiley. Councillor John Wiley is not a member of this committee, but he will be speaking in relation to one of the items on the agenda as the agenda develops. But he is a speaker, but will not have a vote. Thank you very much, everybody. The next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. If anybody has a declaration of interest, now is the time to make it. I'm not seeing any hands, so I take it that we have no declarations. Thank you very much. Item 4 relates to the minutes of the meeting of the 9th of September. If anybody has any comments on those meetings, now is the time. Otherwise, I'd be grateful for a proposer and a seconder for those minutes. Councillor Beckett will propose. Thank you, Terence. And Ben Crystal will second. All those in favour, please show your hand.
There's a few hands that aren't up.
Ben, I'm assuming you're in favour because you seconded, but I can't see your hand.
That's fine. I can see more hands now. It's better.
I don't know if Councillor Crystal is frozen.
Okay, that's a majority of hands up. Any abstentions or against?
Yeah. I'm taking the slightly late hands as just late hands. I'm taking that as everybody being in favour of the minutes. Okay, Councillor Crystal, we've got you now. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to take that as a unanimous agreement of the minutes of the 9th of September. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. So, moving on now, item 5. We have 2 planning items under item 5. As the agenda was printed, we have item A, which relates to an application in Bishop Stortford, and we have item B, which relates to an application in Hertford. We are, in fact, going to take item B first. The first item we will consider this evening is application 318-2798/FUL and 318-2799/LVC. This relates to an extension to basement, including the provision of light wells, erection of ground floor side extensions, first floor rear extension, mansard roof extensions, together with associated elevational alterations, change of use from offices to residential, and conversion to provide 15 self-contained flats at Bluecoat House, 9 Bluecoats Avenue, Hertford. And this application commences at page 89 of the pack. If I could ask the officer concerned, please, to present the item.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. The issues for consideration are set out for you at paragraph 1.4. Of those, you'll see their heritage impact in the conservation area. That carries particular weight, and I will refer just to that particular matter. The building is currently vacant and is listed. It has been vacant for some time. Securing the future use and the refurbishment and upkeep of a listed building does carry substantive positive weight, and you should view that item as being that. In the other matters are dealt with in the report, but that particular issue does carry substantive positive weight. I will now address a late representation that has been received. This is from the occupier of number 8 Blue Coats, which is an adjoining office building. The occupier has previously objected to the proposal, and the previous objections are included in the report. Stated in this objection, which has been circulated to members, they object to the building of a new 2-bedroom apartment in front of number 9 Blue Coats. Also raised is the fact that there is a section 106 agreement relating to 6, 7 and 8 Blue Coats. The owner of number 8 purchased 13 parking spaces in connection with that application to the rear and south side of number 8. This includes one opposite the proposed new apartment as per the modified site plan. And this parking space is included in the layout for the development. Thirdly, the site, the proposal unacceptably restricts access to the side and rear of number 8 for cars and emergency vehicles. And lastly, that work commenced in the basement prior to permission being granted. I'll deal with those issues in turn. At paragraph 8.24 of the report, it deals there with relationship with adjoining buildings, and in particular the relationship with number 8, which is considered to be acceptable. Secondly, at paragraph 8.37 of your report, it identifies there that this is a town centre location and therefore highly accessible. The provision of car parking is therefore not regarded as critical to the acceptability of the development. Members will be aware that substandard and indeed car-free developments of conversions to residential have been permitted in the town centres of both Hertford and Bishop Stortford. The loss of parking space 13 is therefore also not regarded as critical to the development. But the matter should be resolved between the owning parties, and it is important that the parking and site plans are accurate in terms of future enforcement. Therefore, delegated authority is sought to clarify the issue of ownership of the parking space, and if necessary, amend the parking plan if the ownership is incorrect. The sites are no different to the existing situation. I accept that access and circulation within Blue Coats is shared and contentious. This is largely because it's an historic layout, if members know it. It contains a number of listed buildings and historic buildings, and therefore, by its very nature, it is restricted. At the time of it was built, there wasn't such things as wheelie bins and refuse containers and that type of thing. So we are faced with, in terms of layout, the existing situation. It's not ideal, it's not up to modern standards, but it is nevertheless acceptable within this context. I now refer to the slides, Stephen, and just take members through the appearance of the building. So that is a slide of the existing layout. And you'll see there that access is shared from the two access points between the buildings of Bluecoats. The development in question is the building, most southerly building of those. You'll see by the very nature of the site there, historic layout, which is tight. Next slide, please, Stephen. This is the proposed layout with parking to the west side of the building. The roof lights and the extensions to the building in basement terms is shown there next to the parking, and there are extensions on the north sides. The extensions are relatively modest in terms of the overall size of the building. Next slide, please. This is the west elevation with a sectional drawing of the basement included below ground. There is already an existing basement, but that is to be extended. And you can see there the quality of the building and what it would present in terms of providing extensions that are compatible with the existing design. Next slide, please. Again, you can see there that the building is of quality, and the extensions reflect that overall quality of the listed building. Next slide, please. And again, similarly on the north elevation. Thank you, Stephen. Next slide. This slide shows you the sectional north elevation and shows you there the basement extension with parking over. Next slide, please. And again, a representation of the south elevation. So that's the sectional drawing of the basement with the parking and pedestrian circulation space above. Thank you, Stephen. That's the layout, which shows the proposed basement plan and the flats in the basement. Ground floor plan and flat layout with the light wells to the basement there. Thank you. First floor layout. And the second floor layout. and the roof plan. I think the important thing to note there is the quality of the building and the fact that the renovations and extensions to the building are of the same quality, and hence the comments of the conservation officer, who didn't have an issue with the development of the listed building. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much, David. I'm just going to check with Peter Mannings. My understanding, Peter, is that we neither have a speaker for nor against this item.
That is correct.
Okay, in that case, I'll throw it open to the floor. If any member has a question or comment, now is your moment, please. I see Councillor Ruffles' hand. I'll try and take you in batches of 2 or 3 as usual. Councillor Crystal. No, and that's fine to be going on with. So, Councillor Ruffles.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I hope we will give that delegated authority that the officer sought to make clear to the authority, at any rate, that the land ownership for parking can be resolved satisfactorily. But Chairman and members, the importance of this application is quite great, really, for Harford, and I'm glad it qualified to come before committee because of the number of dwellings involved. The proposals for the headmistress's house, which is what this main historic Grade 2 building has been a heritage worry for us in the town in recent years. It's been a bit difficult to know how to put it to a good use, particularly since the office use that it had for some years failed. I hope that the application will meet with members' approval. I would draw the attention of members to the town council's representation. It's a significant one in a way, in the sense that it outlines the nature of the building's historic value. We've just been looking at the drawings on the screen, and they will go some way to making it clear. But unlike its neighbours, the hospital wards or the houses of Christ Hospital, which were built in 1900 or 1904, this particular subject property was not for institutional use in the same way that they were exactly, but for the important domestic use of the headmistress of the school. And it was built in 1770. So there's quite a difference between the ages of those buildings. So I'm particularly grateful, and I know other Harford members have been, for the time that our officers have given the applicants and this application, especially around the relationships and with number 8, which we've heard more about this evening. But my own greatest concern, beyond the heritage part of things, the headmistress's house, has been the proposed density of the new dwellings, because the rest of the site broadly is characteristically spacious in its feel, and the office and residential, particularly the residential properties, for example, the flats have high ceilings and are quite spacious. And this particular proposal contrasts in domestic housing terms with that. But I think, although it is a high density, the flats are quite well distributed within the application site. And in order to distribute them well, some of the changes which we've been looking closely at, of course, are necessary. So my character of the area feelings are eased somewhat because of the way in which the flats are spread through the building and the basement. And I do personally fully accept the argument that the 40% affordable homes requirement for reasons of viability should be relaxed. I think the report does give us a very good argument for so doing, and that 40%, of course, is across the overall district proposals. But Chairman, I'm coming to one question, a final question. One thing I particularly welcome, a detail though, is the replacement of the boundary fencing in Mill Road and on the corner of Ware Road, as it just becomes at that point, to extend the existing 200-year-old southern boundary wall. But I want to be quite sure, and I hope Mr. Snell can reassure me that that southern boundary wall is adequately protected at this time in all the ways that planning terms can afford. And this is the quirky bit. There is an historic artifact on that 200-year-old boundary wall, and it's an important surviving early gas light. Harford as a county town was very early to have gaslit streets, and this is the surviving example, probably from 1830, that we have in the town, and it is on that wall. It would be a great pity if there were any changes. I realise that's just a triviality in some ways, but an important one, and I hope Mr. Snell is confident that the current protection of the southern boundary wall, 200 years old, and the gaslight is adequate. I think that's all I want to say at this point, Chairman, but I may seek your permission to come back in if there's an opportunity later.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ruffles. Councillor Crystal, that was quite a lengthy presentation from Councillor Ruffles, so I'm going to ask David to respond to that now, and then I'll come to you next, if that's okay. David Snell, if you would like to just respond there, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. There were some concerns raised there, which I will refer to. Of course, this is in terms of the density I'm referring to. It is a town centre location. Appreciate that the setting of the whole site, so that's Bluecoats as a whole, is more spacious. But members should very much view this as enabling development. The cost of, you'll see from my comments in where I've dealt with viability in the report, the cost of refurbishment of a listed building can be exceptional. It's not like any other building. The materials alone are more expensive by their very nature. Some development or increase in the size of the building essentially was required in order to get the job done. The building has been vacant for some time, and I think that's a reflection of the fact that it is difficult in terms of development. Officers are quite relaxed about that because it is enabling development. In terms of the wall and the artifact, they are listed. So anything to do with their alteration, removal, or any works at all to them would require listed building consent.
Thank you, David. I thought I saw a nod there from Councillor Ruffles, so I'll move on to Councillor Crystal now, and as you say, if you want to come back, Peter, later you can. So Councillor Ben Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, really. thinking about the park, I mean, I just wanted to say I share Peter's enthusiasm for seeing this heritage site being brought back into use. So it's great to see that happening. The one kind of little niggly things is the parking. I appreciate it's a town site, and I think it's 15 apartments and 11 spaces. And I don't know how they'll be allocated. And I appreciate that seems to is policy compliant. But a couple of things with the parking. I wondered, I think only 4 are marked as being having an electrical charging. I think normally we would ask for an electric charging point at every dwelling in a development, and I wondered whether we could do the same here, whether we could have a charger for each space, presuming each space would be for a different apartment, if that's true. So I wondered what you think about that, Mr. Snell, whether that would be possible. My other query was really to do with the number, again, the number of parking spaces. And I appreciate it's compliant, but I know it will be one of those things that's quite controversial. And so I wondered whether it might be worth pursuing, or maybe worth pursuing, the idea of including one of those spaces being a dedicated car that can be shared between the apartments, formally or informally, maybe managed through a management company, presumably, which would be managing the apartment block. So I just wonder whether that would help sweeten the pill of the lack of parking. And finally, I had a question about the sustainability. I see that the developer talks about using ground source heat pumps to heat and electricity, which is clearly very, very welcome. But I wasn't sure if whether that is conditioned, or whether that depends on subsequent work at the site. I know it's obviously close to an air quality management area within it, and I just wonder whether you could say something about that. Thanks very much.
David.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, the parking is substantial. It's less than the number of flats. It's not substandard for a test centre location. And as I said previously, we have in fact allowed car-free developments in town centre, with and without car sharing and provision of a pool car. I would advise members that this really development isn't really large enough in terms of sustaining that sort of provision. In fact, we have had difficulties securing it on larger schemes, but I wouldn't have thought, without looking into it and off the top of my head, that the development could sustain it financially, in terms of there only being 15 flats. So that would be my response to that. In terms of electric charging, yes, we have encouraged it. It is more difficult, as members are aware, with apartments and apartment blocks than it is with individual dwellings. 4 points was considered satisfactory in this case, and members will appreciate that they can be shared amongst the occupiers. So it was just felt to be acceptable. Yes, if members so wish, we could condition it to provide more, but it was felt to be satisfactory and policy compliant. Sustainability, I think there's a condition which follows that up. In fact, I'm sure there's a condition which follows that up. I'll just quickly endeavour to find it.
is that number 19?
You're way ahead of me, Councillor. I hadn't got to 19, yes. That's correct. So details are required to be submitted. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, I'm now looking around. Tim's hand is all over the screen, but are you wanting to, if you want to speak, Tim, please do, but or are you just fixing your camera?
Chairman,
Yes.
there are 2 blue hands up on the screen, which you may or may not be able to see.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I saw Councillor Devonshire's hand. Is that right?
Yes, Carolyn Redfern as well.
So we'll take you first, Ian, and then we'll take Carolyn Redfern.
And I do wish to speak.
If Tim did wish to speak, we'll take you third, Tim. So, Ian, off you go. You're muted, Ian. We can't hear you.
Sorry. Thanks, Chairman. My question is about viability. 8.3 says it has marginal viability. We know that the engineering costs on this scheme are likely to be high because of the, for instance, extending the basement. It says that they believe the foundations, there's no foundations whatsoever. It also says the extent of these works have not been assessed in detailed design or costed. Obviously, converting a listed building is also expensive, and my concern is that it might get passed. I don't know whether it will or not, but if it does, when they do the costing, the detailed costing, is there a chance that they'll come back and want amendments to the scheme because they can't physically carry out the works that they're proposing to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Redfern.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse my ignorance, but I just wonder exactly what air quality mitigation measures can be taken. I don't actually understand how a developer can do that. I just want a bit of information, that's all. Thank you. Because it is in an air quality area, and I do worry. And the noise as well, noise problems with being on the corner of 2 very busy roads. So if I could just clarify that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Tim, did you want to pass comment? If you did, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Tim.
Okay, on car parking, on page 119 of the report, the way I read the residential vehicle parking provision is that the minimum provision should be 13.25, and that's heavily discounted from 26.5 as a starting point. So I don't quite understand the comment that this is parking compliant. I'm a bit concerned, a bit worried about the late representation we had and the attention drawn to the fact that access for emergency vehicles and I think bin lorries, refuse collection, is not up to standard. I'd like some comment on that. I do understand about viability, but I think it is regrettable that there is no affordable housing, just even if it was one affordable dwelling. But on the other side, I think that bringing the building back into use is great. It's good to see that the conservation and design officers support this scheme and that the statutory consultee has no objection. But I am concerned about access and I am concerned about parking.
Thank you, Tim. I'll take one more question from Tony Stowe.
Thank you, Chairman. I thought you hadn't seen me. It's a very small point, really. On page 116, condition 9, we talk about all the care of, obviously brick sampling, the mortar, the design of the brickwork, the bond and everything else. But the one thing that's not mentioned, which I wonder if could be added, was that the use of imperial bricks to match those existing, which are generally available and a bit more expensive, but they are available. And that would be very important to get the bonding looking right. And it's a lovely building. I welcome the project, and I think the designs are good, and it'd be lovely to see this building put back into good use. So that's just one little niggle point I think would be worthwhile considering. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I know Councillor Beckett's got a question coming, but I'm going to let David answer these questions first, David. Terence, so away you go, David.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of viability, I'll deal with that one first. The viability assessment, or and indeed the review of it by our consultant, the development in terms of viability was marginal without the additional works potentially needed to support the building as identified in the report. So on that basis, it's likely to be even more marginal depending on what works are necessary. In terms of whether an amended scheme is likely to come forward because of the works to the ground, to the basement and supporting the building, I don't know, in all honesty. If it does come forward, then we'll have to deal with that at the time. It's more likely to be a reduced scheme than a bigger scheme. But the developer or owner has been aware for a considerable time that there was likely to be engineering works involved. It wasn't reasonable to request that work to be done. You know, even the consultant work on that would be expensive, so that the applicant needs some degree of certainty in order to go down that route. So the applicant has been aware and hasn't said or hasn't intimated that the scheme won't proceed as designed. So that's the only assurance I can give you on that. And in terms of air quality, that deals with such things as extraction, ventilation, and those types of things that do affect the atmosphere around the building. Yes, it is an old building, and the position is largely how it is, but depending on the how the building is heated, there could be some extraction and exchange, heat exchange, if it's air ground source heat pumps. So that condition is to cover that issue of air quality on extraction from the building. In terms of car parking, the report is correct. The discounted level of parking for the site's location, which is just off town centre, is 13. The range is 13 to the higher figure, can't remember. Yeah, the range is the higher figure. So the 13 is with the discounted amount. Within the town centre itself, car-free schemes are permitted, and there is a bigger discount. This site is just off centre, so we, in assessing car parking, we give that some leeway. I mean, it has to be remembered that it's very close to the bus station and very close to Hertford East railway station, so it's a highly accessible site, and we make allowance for that. Condition 9 Councillor Stowe. Yes, that would that would include matching sizes, not just matching sizes of brickwork, not just the mortar mix. So the details of the bricks would need to be submitted. What we normally ask for in terms of a listed building is that a sample wall will be built up against an existing wall. So we compare the difference or similarity, if you like, more importantly, before the development starts. So that's the normal process. With normal applications, samples are merely submitted, but in the case of a listed building, it's normally a sample on site.
Thank you, David. Okay, I've got Terence Beckett. I'm going to make this the last round of questions, if that's okay for everybody. So I've got Councillor Beckett, who's already shown. If anybody else would like to speak, now is the time. Councillor Kemp. So we'll take Councillor...
Yeah, Chairman, one of my questions wasn't answered.
Yeah, okay. Tim, just repeat your question then, please.
I'd like some reassurance about access to the site for emergency vehicles and service vehicles, which was featured in the late representations.
Thank you. I'll let Councillors Beckett and Kemp ask their questions, and then David Snell will pick everything up in his final comments. So, Councillor Beckett.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, David. I'm really pleased to see the site going down the ground source heat pump route, far more efficient than air source heat pumps. However, this is my geeky work life coming into play. They're using an open loop system, and there are hidden costs with open loop systems. So I'm assuming we've got some delegated authority and conditions around stewardship in place of the wider site. And I'd just like us to add in there conditions around, or at least within the stewardship demonstration, around the maintenance of the heat exchanger, because with an open loop system, they need higher maintenance because they clog up a little bit. And also they'll need to run and service the abstraction pump on a regular basis as well. So there's a regular maintenance issue around ground source heat pump when they're open loop. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Beckett. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you. Indeed, following on from Councillor Beckett's question, I wonder whether a closed loop ground source heat pump system has been considered instead. I think, like everybody else, I welcome that this historic building will be preserved and put to good new use as a result of this. Normally one might be concerned at the loss of any office or industrial space, but clearly it hasn't been used or attractive for that. On the parking side, it is of course surrounded by offices, and I wonder if any possibility exists for sharing of parking spaces between offices and residential units, given they're likely to be occupied at different times, and whether that is something that can be encouraged officially, or whether it's something for those businesses to work out with the flat owners.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. So, David Snell, last round of response, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll deal with Councillor Page's issue first. Yes, it is tight, but we believe that the circulation is adequate for access for emergency vehicles. The problem is on this site that there are multiple owners, and it's got a shared access arrangement which serves the whole of Bluecoats. And if you look into the objections a bit deeper, it's largely around the question of obstruction, which we can't control through planning. The things like parking obstruction and you know, things like wheelie bins obstructing access. I'm afraid we can't control that, and that is a matter that the owners really need to work out amongst themselves. But in terms of adequate access as per plan, yes, it is acceptable. It is very difficult to add stewardship to conditions. It has been held by the courts that the length of period that conditions can be used to control future events is limited. If I can refer you to our standard condition on landscaping, for example, the landscape implementation standard condition says that plants missing, dying, or otherwise removed should be replaced. And there's a time limit on that condition, which is 5 years. That 5 years is there for a reason. It follows judgments, and it follows what is now the model condition. So there is a time limit which has been considered reasonable. Conditions can't steward sites indefinitely, is what I'm saying. So in my view, no, you couldn't add continued maintenance to the condition as it exists. You could only do that by section 106 agreement, which we have done on the large sites. We've included it in the section 106 strategic sites, for example, various maintenance clauses in the section 106. In this case, there isn't a section 106, and it wouldn't really be reasonable or cost effective to do a section 106 solely for that purpose. Parking sharing, I believe it already is, or partly, but no, that is not something we can consider. We have to consider the application as submitted, and yes, you're right, Councillor, that's a matter that needs to be worked out between the owners. I think that covers everything, Chairman.
Just a little quick one. There was a suggestion moving between Councillors Beckett and Kemp as to whether we should be on an open loop or a closed loop.
I have no idea what that means, Chairman. But basically, we're considering the application as submitted. I'm sure when it comes to the details submitted in the for the condition, that the developer will consider the most cost-effective and efficient system.
Okay, just really quick, Councillor Beckett, and then we will wrap this item up.
Oh yeah, open loop and closed loop are exactly what they are. And the open loop system usually has 2 pipes, one to extract and one to put back. Closed loop system normally has a chemical in it, and it just spins the stuff around, the liquid. Closed loop is more expensive to install, which is why I'm guessing they've gone for it. On the point from Officer Snell, my provocation to you would be, from a certification point of view, and having done BREEAM and Code for Sustainable Homes for the last 15 years, if we can just get something in there, even for 5 years, alongside a management plan, it's likely that the Residents Association will make sure that they keep it up going beyond that. And it just means that there's one there in the first place. Just a point. Thank you.
Okay. I wonder if I can just say where I think that discussion's gone. Or at least just pick out a couple of items in that discussion. It does seem to me that if we are to grant this application, we will need to provide officers with the delegated authority that David Snell identified at the beginning of his comments. So when I ask for a vote, it will be on that basis. And I think a couple of points have come up in relation to electrical charging points. And I think the consensus of the discussion was that officers feel that they can ask for more or complete car charging points to be installed, but they didn't think that for this size of development, the idea of a car share arrangement was viable, and they were not minded to raise that with the developer. So with those points in mind, I'm now going to seek a vote on this application. So do I have a proposer? I think that might be Terence Fecky. His hand was very quick to go up. And Councillor Devonshire, you seconding? Yeah, thank you very much. So can I ask all those in favour of this item, which I will just read out again so we're all very, very clear. We actually have two items, just again. Ben, are you wanting to speak? No, okay, I have a proposal and a seconder. I'm taking the proposal and a seconder for both these items, if that's okay with everybody. So
yeah,
let's
to include the delegated authority, yes.
Just to be clear for everyone, we have two items. The first is 318-2798 FUL, and the second item is 318-2799 LBC. I'm taking the proposer and seconder in relation to both those items, and we will be voting on both those items on the basis of my comments of just a few minutes ago. And this is in relation to extension to basement, including the provision of light wells, erection of ground floor side extensions, first floor rear extension, mansard roof extensions, together with associated elevational alterations, change of use from offices to residential, and conversion to provide 15 self-contained flats at Bluecoat House, 9 Bluecoats Avenue, Hertford. All those in favour, please show your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Chairman.
Thank you very much. If we have any votes against, please show your hand.
No.
And if we have any abstentions, please show a hand.
No.
In that case, we've carried this item unanimously. To recap, we have just agreed to grant permission in relation to items 318-2798 FUL and also 318-2799 LBC, extension to basement, including the provision of light wells, erection of ground floor side extensions, first floor roof extension, mansard roof extensions, together with associated elevational alterations, change of use from offices to residential, and conversion to provide 15 self-contained flats at Bluecoat House, 9 Bluecoats Avenue, Hertford. Thank you all very much. Having dealt with that item, we now move on to deal with the other planning item for this evening. In the agenda, this is identified as item 5A, but of course we're taking it second. The papers for this application commence at page 37 of the deck. I'm just going to need page 37 on my screen. Nearly there. Okay, this is application 320-0151 OUT, and this is an application that is an outline planning permission application with all matters reserved apart from access for the erection of up to 223 dwellings with associated access, parking, landscaping and vehicular access. I'm the officer presenting this item to us this evening is Fiona Dunning, and I'm going to call upon Fiona please now to go ahead and present the item.
Thank you, Chairman. There is an update sheet that was published on online earlier today after 5 p.m. So I hope that members have had the opportunity of looking at that. It covers the comments that were received either in the last couple of days or after the report was written. And I won't address it in any detail, but if members have any questions based on that update sheet, I'm happy to respond to those during questions. The details of the application: it's an outline application for up to 223 residential dwellings on the existing Bishop Stortford High School site. The redevelopment of the site has been accepted in principle by it being identified as a strategic housing site in the district plan, and also having a master plan associated with it. This is in accordance with policy DES 1, where the master plan process was carried out in 2019 with the adoption of the master planning document by council in January this year. Therefore, the master plan is a material consideration to the assessment of the application. The master plan identified that the site could achieve more than 150 dwellings that were indicated in the district plan as around 150 dwellings suitable for the site. And this is set out in the report. The increase in the number of dwellings, or potential number of dwellings, was due to the site not requiring to provide land for the adjoining primary school, as it's not expanding, as the county council have decided to create a new primary school on the Bishop Stortford South site, which has 3 forms of entry. And I just wanted to also say that the 150 dwellings that are identified in the district plan is not a cap, it's indicative of what could be achieved, because when the plans were being developed, the officers didn't undertake a full assessment, like a detailed assessment of the proposal on what could be achieved on the site. So that's why, and I think it's set out in the report, but if members have any questions in relation to that, I would be happy to respond to that. So, and due to the application being an outline application, there aren't any plans associated with the application apart from the master plan itself. And I'll run through the details of that shortly. And when we do look at it, I'll refer to the density of the adjoining and nearby properties. And if you could sort of compare the density of the proposed development to the adjoining properties in an aerial photo, you will be able to see that the site can support more than 150 dwellings. So the report provides a summary of the comments received from consultees and objectors, and the principle of redeveloping the site for residential has been established, as I said. I just wanted to clarify a couple of comments in the report on page 43 at paragraph 5.2. I just wanted to say that the Highway Authority does not consider there are existing road safety issues, and the development is not considered to create any reason to refuse the application. Highways officers are here tonight to assist members in reaching a decision, and they would be happy to respond to these questions. The other item that I just wanted to clarify was the comments from the housing officer on page 43 of the report, paragraph 5.4. The housing officer was satisfied that the development proposed 40% affordable housing, and this tenure was 75% affordable rent and 25% intermediate housing. Now, that's not quite in accordance with the housing policy. However, the housing officer recognised that paragraph 64 of the NPPF requires 10% of affordable housing to be intermediate housing. So with this scheme, this indicative scheme of 223 dwellings, that means that 22 dwellings would be shared ownership or intermediate housing, which that is equivalent to the 25% intermediate housing. So if I could move to the slides. Okay, this is slide showing the district plan and the site outlined in red. And you'll see that on the eastern side, which is the right-hand side of the screen, that the red line doesn't quite cover all of the existing school buildings. And so the area that isn't covered was where that land was going to be for the primary school expansion. So that's the area of land that is additional to the development site. If we move to slide 2, so this is the red line boundary for the planning application. It does include some of the existing primary school site for the access to the western parcel on the left-hand side. So to compensate that additional land, the existing school site, high school site, will provide the primary school with additional land, and the next slide will show that. So you see the faint green outline of the site. So that's the developable area of this planning application. Thank you. If we can move to the next slide. So you'll see the site has two characteristics. On the eastern side is where the existing school buildings and all of the hard standing area is located. And then on the western side is the playing fields of the school site with the sports pavilion in the sort of the mid right-hand corner of the site. So you can see that the site sits within a residential character, and there are a number of landscaping elements to the site. There's a TPO area on the eastern side, and then on the western side, just on the boundary of the western parcel, is the Spinney, which is mainly in the ownership of East Herts District Council, and all of those trees are protected. So if we can move to the next one. So you see the proposed or the indicative layout of up to 223 dwellings. That includes a mixture of detached dwellings, attached dwellings, and residential apartments up to 3 stories. And I think that you can see that there is a lot of green space proposed in this. This is the master plan, in the master plan. And so there is the ability of ensuring that the future occupants of the site have adequate access to communal open space. And there's also, it's also outlined in the planning conditions and section 106 to ensure that will be achieved. So if we move to the next slide. So this just shows the proposed density or indicative density heights. So there's some buildings that will be 3 stories, the apartment buildings, and the majority of the site will be 2-story dwellings. I think that it's just indicative, as I said. So the location of the 3 stories is not fixed. So I think that there was some concern about the potential impact of the apartment building in the western parcel of the land. While we're looking at this slide, I'll just refer members, those members who were able to attend the site visit, I think in August, I think it was. We walked between the eastern parcel and the western parcel. And the eastern parcel, we identified trees, and they're shown on the plan. And those trees are to be retained. because the roadway will be widened to the north. So those trees will be retained, which is, I think, very important for the occupants of the adjoining properties, because there will be quite a change from school students walking past compared to vehicles driving past. And in addition to the retention of those trees, further tree planting will be included on that boundary. So I think that the residents of those adjoining properties will be assured that there will be some change, but it won't be significant to their amenity. So if we move to the next slide. So this is the part of the detailed application, which is the proposed access onto London Road. It includes pedestrian footpaths on both sides of the site, and the Highways Authority was satisfied that there was adequate room for larger vehicles, emergency vehicles, as well as accommodating the two developments sites, so up to 223 dwellings on the site. Okay, if we just we might I guess we might refer to the master plan later on, but I think that can be completed. So in summary, it's an outline application for up to 223 dwellings, and the details of all of the development will be subject to reserve matters applications, as well as complying with the conditions and the Section 106 planning obligations. The proposal is a strategic site in the district plan and is needed to meet the housing targets, and will deliver 40% affordable housing on a brownfield site in a sustainable location. And I think that's really important, that the site is extremely well located for access to Bishop Stortford town centre. It's been within a short walking distance of approximately 1 mile, and it has very good access to other facilities that are all within walking distance and cycling distance. So it is a sustainable location. The sale of the land will also help fund the modern school for Bishop Stortford South, and the development will help contribute towards the expansion of that school and the expansion of Herts and Essex School for Girls. The district plan does not place a cap on the 150 dwellings. It's an indicative amount, and it's subject to master planning process, as well as the planning application process. And it's been demonstrated that the site can achieve more than 150 dwellings. And the report also refers to the fact that the neighbourhood plan identified the site as being suitable for 200 to 250 dwellings. The density of the development at 223 dwellings is 30 units per hectare, which is very similar to the adjoining developments nearby. So that I don't think it's unreasonable to permit more than, up to 223 dwellings on this site, because it does fit in with the character of the area and the density of the area. The dwellings on the eastern portion of the site will create a more permeable area in the form of gardens and open space, and also the sustainable drainage, compared to the significant hard standing areas of the school buildings and hard surface play areas. There is a requirement, there is a requirement for a locally equipped area of play on the site to meet the needs of the development, and this is likely to be on the western portion of the site where it's shown on the indicative plan. And in addition to that, there is some open space leading towards the western side of the site adjacent to the spinning. Other benefits include the formal pedestrian access to the west, which I mentioned, contributions towards pedestrian and cycle improvements, 2 travel vouchers per dwelling for 12 months to encourage residents to use public transport rather than using their private vehicles. And also there are conditions proposed in relation to electric vehicle charging points for each individual dwelling, and then a communal charging point area for the apartment building. So it's promoting that sustainability element of the scheme. And I just want to refer to 9.3 in my conclusion. I state that I consider that there's a neutral impact on highways and access. This was looking at the sustainability or sustainable transport measures in total. So yes, there will be, or there are existing traffic issues at the moment, and the promotion of the sustainable transport measures such as walking, cycling, public transport will, I consider, make the overall transport issues neutral. So I just wanted to clarify that. There are several conditions, and the Section 106, which is considered to cover all of the issues for the outline planning application, and all of the reserve matters would be reported back to this committee. I'm happy to respond to questions, and as I mentioned, highways colleagues and education colleagues are available to also respond to questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Now, for this item, we do have a number of speakers. I'm just going to, for the benefit of the committee and anyone watching on YouTube, I'm just going to run through who the speakers will be, and then we'll take them in the sequence. We have a speaker against, who is Mr. Paul Dean, who is the chairman of Bishop Stortford Civic Federation. He will get 6 minutes to speak. We have 2 speakers in favour. That's Alan Fordham, who is the chair of governors at the Bishop Stortford High School, and also Mary Jane O'Neill, who is with Lambert Smith Hampton. They will share 6 minutes between them. We also have local town councillor Keith Warnell, who wants to speak. He will get 6 minutes. And then we have district councillors, local district councillors who wish to speak. John Wiley, who I know is with us waiting to be called, and fellow East Herts District Councillor Diane Holliban will speak if she's able to attend. I know that she has an unmissable alternative engagement this evening, but if she's able to make it while we're still debating, she will speak as well.
I believe she's online at the moment, Chairman.
Yes, indeed. So I'm going to start then by asking Mr. Paul Dean to turn his camera on. And, there we go. I think I see you now, Mr. Dean. Welcome. So just to be very clear for you, you will have 6 minutes to speak. The time will start from the moment you start to speak, but please don't forget to unmute yourself so we hear every word you have to say. You will be guillotined at the end if you're still speaking when the 6 minute point comes on. So over to you, Mr. Dean.
Good evening and thank you. 18 months ago, the community came to the DMC to object to the Bishop Stortford South application based on its severe traffic impacts, especially in the London Road corridor. Despite this being the main concern of nearly 1,500 objectors, the DMC gave consent after EHC's legal officer's assurances that a precondition per phase would provide a proper assessment of transport impact without which each phase cannot go forward. However, the decision notice included no mitigation conditions and no means of mitigating the impacts of future phases. The transport assessment for this application has had to adopt updated and realistic assumptions about the traffic impact of BSS, the relocated school, Bish 6 and other major developments. It shows their cumulative effect, which we said were unsustainable, is now catastrophic. It shows or forecasts at peak hours in 2029, most London road junctions will be at 100 to 250% of capacity. Thorley Hill London Road is already at over 90% of capacity, and by 2029 on London Road northbound will be at 130% of capacity AM and 170% PM. That's 168 vehicles AM stretching 850 metres south into Thorley Street and more than 200 metres PM stretching south over 1 kilometre. London Road Pig Lane, the worst case, will be at 250% of capacity, with 63 vehicles in Pig Lane stretching back over 300 metres and a wait of 29 minutes to turn into London Road. In response to these, the applicant says, the impact of the proposed development is small in comparison with the impacts of the background traffic growth and growth associated with committed developments, including the consented BSS development. In other words, the unsustainable impacts are the result of BSS and TBSHS's relocation, and this development's impacts will be small. So it's not its problem to fix, and no mitigation is proposed. And while HCC acknowledges that in Pig Lane there is an existing issue and mitigation measures are being explored by the authority, no mitigation is included in the 35 conditions proposed in the officer's report. We also understand the S106 sum of £323,000 for the local transport schemes will only be used to fund part of a county-wide cycle route. All this is contrary to the NPPF Paras 108 and 109 and HCC's LTP4 policy 5G, which say, Para 108, severe impacts should be mitigated to an acceptable degree, meaning the TA should demonstrate mitigation will work before consent is granted. And if it cannot, Para 109, development may be prevented or refused on highways grounds if the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe, which they are. LTP4 policy 5G says HCC will resist development that would severely impact the rural or residential character of a road, a clear description of the severe impact in Pig Lane. The applicant's own transport assessment therefore clearly shows the cumulative impacts will be extreme and contains no mitigation plans, so the development contravenes all these policies. Secondly, these unsustainable traffic impacts are compounded by the proposed 50% increase in homes from around 150, District Plan Policy BISH 6.2, to 223, especially as, when reviewing the district plan, the inspector made it absolutely clear that around is indicative of the actual number of homes built and not the baseline. At HCC and TBSHS, both had opportunity to ask for a higher number of homes, but chose not to. In this respect, the consents already committed or granted are concerning for the town, with at least 464 additional homes and care home places approved on district plan and small non-windfall sites in the town, compared to an overall total of around 4,426, including windfall developments. In addition, a further 357 homes have been applied for, including the additional 73 on this development, but excluding windfalls. So currently, and ignoring windfall developments, the town's total number of homes and care home places is already 11% over target and is likely to be close to 20% or more. This is excessive unsustainable, and sets precedents for other developments in the district, as well as Bishop Stortford. Indeed, developers now appear to be treating the plan numbers as minimums from which they can be increased by anything up to 50%, often without proper justification. For example, the officer's report simply says Thorley Hill Primary School is not expanding and therefore more land is available for new housing. While no additional need or demand has been demonstrated, and neither land availability nor maximising financial returns.
Time's up, Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Dean, I've been informed that you've hit 6 minutes and therefore your speaking time is up. Thank you very much for your contribution. The next speaker or speakers that we have are Alan Fordham, Chair of Governors of Bishop Stortford High School, and Mary Jane O'Neill of Lambert Smith Hampton, the consultants. Can I just remind Mr. Fordham and Ms. O'Neill again that you have 6 minutes to share. How you choose to share those 6 minutes is a matter for your own personal discussion, but together you have no more than 6 minutes. I don't know who's going to speak first, but whoever does, the clock will start from the moment you start speaking.
Mr. Fordham's going to speak first, I believe.
Well, you go, Mr. Fordham, then.
Thank you, Chairman and members, for the opportunity to address the committee. My name is Alan Fordham and I'm Chair of Governors at the Bishop Stortford High School. The approval of this application on the existing school site will enable the school to move to new premises, though planning approval off of St James Way, some 400 metres south of our current site, for this community-driven project. The financial model for the new school fundamentally allows for 100% of the funds raised from the sale of our existing site to provide a major contribution, without which the new build and subsequent move could not take place. The existing school, built in 1952, is more than in need of substantial repair, proved to the DFE as impossible if we were to keep the school running. The site area of the new school is almost double the area of the existing site. The existing building was built as a 3-form entry and now acts as a 5-form entry school. The new school will be 6-form entry with 8-form core facilities, assisting the planned expansion in the southern part of town. The school has actively engaged with students, parents, and the local community, including a 1,300 leaflet drop and open day on the 10th of July 2019, where 147 residents attended and 62% voted in favour of the move. Parents past and present have been extremely supportive, knowing only too well how desperate the buildings and facilities are compared to local senior schools. A master plan for the site was evolved, and invitees to the several meetings at the school included the parish council, the town council, the district council, the civic federation, planning officers, and the school and its consultants. To secure and be able to use the negotiated DFE funding, the school needs to be completed by July 2022 to open in September, which means a start on site in the next few months. COVID problems have invariably caused delays, but we need to demonstrate to the DFE our part of the funding support backed by this approval within the next few weeks. It is for this reason our consultants have been meticulous in answering all officers' queries and acting in response to suggestions, including a substantial archaeological dig and numerous county highways requests and reviews. In addition, we have also tacitly agreed a substantial 106 schedule of works and contributions that have resulted in less funds being available for the school build. The site, now including surplus land set aside for the junior school expansion, is in the development plan for residential and meets with the authorities' design guides. If the new school land at Bishop Stortford South was not to go ahead, we advised Bishop Stortford South would increase the overall number of houses there could go to 1,000 against 750, an increase of 250 homes, i.e. more than we propose. Taking into account these significant material considerations, members are respectfully requested to grant planning permission for the development proposed. Thank you, Chair and members, for your time.
Mary J. O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. My name is Mary Jane O'Neill, and I am Head of Planning at Lambert Smith Hampton, acting on behalf of the applicant. This outline application is located on a site that is allocated within the adopted East Herts local plan. As highlighted by Alan, the redevelopment proposals will provide clear community benefits, including funding and supporting the provision of the new high school to the south of Bishop Stortford. The proposals, which have been carefully worked up with input from your officers, will deliver up to 223 dwellings. This includes policy compliant 40% affordable housing, which carries significant positive weight. As well as agreeing the proposals with officers and with members, the draft proposals were presented at a public exhibition and discussed with many residents prior to submitting the application. The comments raised through this comprehensive and collaborative pre-application process were taken into consideration in finalising the proposals that are before you. Whilst the proposals are in outline form at this stage, the illustrative master plan demonstrates that the development will have an indicative density of 30 dwellings per hectare, which is similar density to the nearby residential developments and surrounding area. It also makes the most effective use of land as promoted by national planning policy guidance. Moreover, the proposals accord with the neighbourhood plan, which considers the site could accommodate between 200 and 250 dwellings. The illustrative master plan also demonstrates how trees and landscaping will be retained for the purposes of both amenity and biodiversity. It establishes pedestrian links to the surrounding area and provides an entrance that has been agreed with the council's landscape officer who supports the scheme. The proposals provide satisfactory access to the development, an appropriate level of parking, and the required highway mitigation measures to ensure that impacts are appropriately mitigated. In addition to the significant community benefits, the proposed development will deliver much needed housing on a brownfield site within the town, but also, and importantly, support the delivery of the new school, which is to be provided to the south of the town. This is a significant public benefit. Finally, a substantial package of Section 106 contributions has been agreed with officers. These will provide numerous public and community benefits.
Yes, Ms O'Neill, you've taken your, well, you've used up the rest of the 6 minutes. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you. I'm now going to call on the local town councillor, Keith Warnell, to speak to us. Keith, just to remind you, you also have 6 minutes. I think you're very familiar with the way it works. Just as with the previous speakers, should you still be speaking at 6 minutes, you will be cut off. Time will start when you start to speak. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. I'm Chairman of Planning at Bishop Stortford Town Council and a ward member for South Ward, and I speak tonight in those capacities. Some may remember me as a former member of this authority and a member of this very committee. There are issues with this application: housing numbers, policy, master planning, and traffic issues. My planning committee rejected this application on the grounds of the transport assessment, which showed catastrophic, their words, not ours, traffic congestion of 800 yards, queues, and 29-minute delays, also on housing numbers and on pollution levels. As chairman of the neighbourhood plan that was referred to earlier, it says 200 to 150 houses, properties. The neighbourhood plan in that respect was superseded by the district plan, which states 150. But Chairman, the policy Bish 1 states around 150, and around in the Oxford Dictionary equals approximate. Logically, that's about 140 to 160, not 223. It has been said that justification as the primary school land is no longer needed, so it's okay to go to 223. That's not what your policy says. It says around 150. East Herts spent some time agreeing this plan with the planning inspectorate and is actually ignoring it. If the intention was to cater for the more than 150, then it should have been put into the BISH 1 and BISH 6 policies, or amendment made to the district plan, which I can't see exists. On that basis alone, the application should be refused. The comments about the funding of the new school is not a planning related matter. I must turn to the master plan process, which just isn't good enough, with only 3 meetings to which Bishop Stortford Town Council were never invited nor consulted. I have this on authority from our Chief Executive. Nor were residents' associations and other key stakeholders. As a ward councillor, I was not. Neither were representatives in the planning committee and the neighbourhood plan. Your policy, DES 1, specifically calls for town and parish councils and stakeholders to be consulted. And to quote from the minutes of the first master plan meeting, key consultees that have already been identified include Sport England, the Town Council, HCC Highways and the primary school. It seems from the minutes of those meetings and other info gathered that 2 Bishop Stortford Town Council ward councillors were invited to the 3rd and last meeting and 2 were not. Those town councillors invited, the first 2 mentioned, were already on this meeting as the district councillors, as evidenced in the first master plan meeting minutes. Also invited was a councillor from another side of town with little knowledge of this matter. I suspect he may have been invited as he was part of the Manor Links master plan group. These invites, though, were direct from an East Herts officer and not via the town council. Chairman, there was not proper consultation here with relevant stakeholders. Neither invited would have consulted with the town council, Thorley Manor or Old Thorley and Twyford residents associations whose areas this is in, and crucially, as I understand, neither were Herts Highways, who I believe had to ask to attend the last meeting. And when this was specifically queried at a meeting, the response was, we can get all we need from our consultants. Our Civic Federation was only invited to the last meeting too. If other stakeholders were consulted outside of the only 3 meetings, which in itself is scant consultation, then not all parties are aware of all the points raised by others. That's not right either. It's not democratic and it is a failure to consult with the stakeholders. Curiously, the master plan was passed by the Executive Town and full council with these omissions. I assert there has been a process error here, that not all those should have been consulted were. And that is a breach of your master plan policy DES 1, which is another reason for refusal. Chairman, my last point is briefly on traffic. Other speakers have already spoken on this with their expertise. But I must say the traffic issues of this development must not be seen in isolation. The traffic implications of Whittington Way site, the school which moves from this site to there, have consequential implications for traffic locally and the wider area, which has been said already. I have heard that there's a suggestion that the traffic bound from the M11 should not run through Pig Lane, should use the bypass. However, there is a planned exit for 2,200 homes from Bishop Stortford North there, coming soon. In summary, this application should be refused and resubmitted with the errors in the process corrected, and a master plan consultation rerun with all the stakeholders. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address your committee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Warnell. Thank you. And you did a very good job of coming in on 6 minutes, I think. Well done. Thanks. Yes, indeed. It's a skill. Well done. Thank you. Now going to ask East Herts District Local Councillor John Wiley to speak to us. I'm just going to nod in Peter Manning's direction for a second, John. I believe I'm right to say that Councillor Wiley does not have a time limitation. Is that correct, Peter?
I mean, essentially it's at your discretion, Chairman, but there's no specific limit. No.
Okay, thank you. So you're not time limited, John, but obviously bear in mind comments made by others, and you feel repetition coming on, try and hold yourself in check. But Otherwise, the floor
I
is
will
yours.
try to keep it less than an hour, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairman, and good evening, members of the committee. Before I start, Chairman, I have some intended comments, but I am concerned that the officer mentioned in the report that the sale of this site will help to fund the new schools. I'm not sure that that's a planning issue, and I'm not sure that members should be taking that into account. I would like to ask legal officers for clarification on that statement made by officers. I will now progress with my intended comments. As a ward member for Bishop Stortford South, I wish to speak to your committee regarding the application. The district plan was a difficult document to get through the council, and we were told it would strengthen planning rules within the district. I'm not saying this site should not have housing. That battle's been lost. The site is included in the district plan, and I accept that. My two concerns regarding the application are, and members have been told this by the other speakers, that the inspector stated the plan should be around. I'm not sure that 223 could be classed as around 150. If that's the case, then 75 is also around 150. The application is using a roughly 50% increase, and in my view is making a mockery of the district plan. And if this increase is allowed, regardless of the reasoning, we're told it's because the primary school no longer needs the extra pieces of land. If this is allowed to continue, we might as well rip up the district plan, forget about it, and just allow developers a free hand to decide their own policies. My other concern, Chairman, is the traffic, and members have heard from other speakers that traffic is an issue. I've yet to see any plans that tackle the already congested London Road route. This site with 223 houses will add around 300 extra cars to the congestion. And please don't accept the weak argument that some people may give you that COVID will mean we'll work from home more. This isn't true. It might be true now, but in future things will return to near normality. And in fact, if the COVID argument is to be taken into account, we could actually say more cars will be in the road because people will be travelling less on public transport. Pig Lane, as you've heard, is already congested. It's dangerous due to the layout. I hope members have actually had a chance to look at it. Putting more cars down there is not acceptable, neither is it safe. Another concern is when it comes to traffic reports, Pig Lane is claimed to be the rat run. Surveys usually then end when we get to the Essex boundary. What these reports fail to mention is when you turn left at that junction in Essex, a few hundred metres down the road, and you're back in Bishop Stortford. And then you travel up Beldham's Lane and Haymeads Lane to get to the M11 and A120. I haven't seen any reports that mitigate the increase in pollution in Hockrell, which is already an air quality hotspot, as vehicles will either travel that way to the M11 or 120, or again, I say they will use Beldham's Lane and Haymead. If you look at the traffic report on 3.19, it tells you the junctions that have actually had turn queues and counts. Neither of them, none of those seem to say that Beldham's and Haymeads have been taken into account. So I would like you to ask your officers and to ask the highways officers, have Beldham's and Haymeads junction been taken into account? And if so, what increase in traffic will there be there? Beldham's and Haymeads is actually a route to the local hospital, so we don't really want to add any more traffic to that one. I would ask, Chairman, that you question the scope of the travel plan in general, as well as the larger number of housing. I believe there are many more questions that need to be answered regarding the increase in dwelling on this site and the proposed traffic. I would ask you, committee, to defer this application for further work to be done. Officers may say to you that the site is earmarked for development, and it is. However, this does not mean the specific application has to be passed. I'm not asking for the application to be turned down, just deferred for further assessment. You may be told that the applicant could appeal. However, if the applicant has not produced a convincible traffic plan, I doubt it would be wise to do such actions. Finally, you may be advised that this is outline planning and such details could be thrashed out later. From my experience, this never happens. When it came to Bishop Stortford South, your committee were advised that no building would start without local members being consulted over traffic concern. Work has started, and I was never consulted regarding these concerns. So I must stress that these issues need to be discussed and sorted out at this stage. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, committee.
Thank you very, very much, Councillor Wiley. I wasn't timing you, but I think you came in well under 6 minutes. So thank you very much for that.
Chairman?
Yes.
Did you want to ask Elaine Bell to come in now on the legal point or later? Or
Well, I thank you very much. What I will do, just to be completely sure, is am I right that Diane Holliborn has not been able to join us?
I don't think she's on at the moment. No, she's not.
No, in which case we will proceed on the basis that we've now had all our external speakers. I think we do need to hear from Elaine Bell, but perhaps just before we get to that, perhaps I can just make sure I've got my bearings right on this. Just to be clear, and I'm sorry if this is very basic, but I think it will help me and possibly all of us. Can I just be clear that we are dealing with an outline application for up to X number of dwellings, and we're not dealing with an application for X number of dwellings. It's up to whatever the number is. It's 223, of course. And I've got a couple of questions, again, for me to set the scene. There's been some concern expressed about the efficacy of the master planning process. And I'd like an officer to speak to that because it seems to me that that is quite important. My understanding is that the paper proceeds on the basis that the principle of development on this site has been established by virtue of the master planning process. So it's an important point to deal with this evening. And I'd also like some scene setting comments in relation to the observations that have been made that the neighbourhood plan contemplated between 200 and 250 units for this site. And we've heard Councillor Warnell say that that's been superseded by the district plan. But I'd nevertheless like to know how the neighbourhood plan fits together with the district plan and the extent to which we should take note of the neighbourhood plan. If I could invite Fiona or indeed another officer to comment on those issues, I'd be very grateful.
Just in relation to the sale of the land, if I could just make a comment that in the MPPF it talks about sustainable development having economic and social objectives, and because it's a school, there are both economic and social objectives related to the sale of the land to create the new school, and that's why that's how I've linked it to be a material consideration. In regard to the master plan process, it's an adopted master plan. It was adopted by executive and by full council. The local community groups were able to comment on it. They were consulted on it, and the minutes of the steering group show that they were involved. The policy DES1 doesn't say that each part of the community needs to be included in every application. It's consulting them on the master planning process. So that's why it was considered to be consultation undertaken. And the applicant has detailed in the planning document submitted with the application details of the consultation they undertook as part of the pre-application process. But that also ran parallel with the preparation of the master plan. And so the comments received at those meetings fed into the preparation of the master plan. So there were a number of times when the town council and the civic federation were involved in the process. It should also be said that because it is adopted, the process isn't actually a material consideration in the determination of this application, because it is adopted, it is an adopted master plan. In relation to the neighbourhood plan, So this the document is still in place, but Councillor Warnell is correct in that because the district plan has been adopted and indicates that the site is suitable for around 150 dwellings, then that does supersede this document. However, it indicates that the figure is not based on any design undertaking of the site. So they've said that the neighbourhood plan has said 200 to 250 houses. The policy team considered that 150 houses, taking into account the expansion of the primary school. So it's not until a detailed design is undertaken or a master plan design is undertaken that the full knowledge of what could be achieved on the site is known. And I understand that there are other strategic sites that have said around a certain number, but have exceeded that particular number, which is fine. So because it's based on the character of the adjoining area, the density, and other elements of proposals.
Thank you very much, Fiona. So I'll turn now to members. Through the chat function, I know that Ian Devonshire has a question. I'll take another couple at this stage if there are any more. Buckmaster. Okay, let's take those two questions. You go first, Ian, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a couple of questions on two different subjects. Unfortunately, my first question is going to be on highways, and it's about the access into the site. Firstly, you all probably know that London Road in the morning, about 9 o'clock, and in the evening at 5 o'clock is absolutely at capacity. I take into account that the Bishop Stortford South Commission has some mitigating measures, but I'd just like some clarification on that. The other thing is the elevation change. The present school is many, many metres above London Road. So that access road in must be a very, very steep grading, I would think, to get into this site. I just want to know about that. And my other point is about the boundaries. Fiona very kindly said that the boundaries are going to be addressed by retaining the existing trees and some additional tree planting, which is very welcome. But I'm still a bit concerned about the 3-storey apartment block, which is very close to the rear gardens of Grace Gardens. I think they must be able to see that 3-storey apartment block. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ruth Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I also have two questions. The first one actually is the same one as Councillor Devonshire about the traffic modelling and what mitigation is going to be put into place. My second question is on the housing on page 43, 5.4, where it mentions the affordable housing does not meet the local need. Now, I'd like to ask, why doesn't it meet the local need? Why is the developer allowed to just put in 40% of 1 and 2 bedroom flats when in fact the local need is 2 and 3 bedroom houses? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckmaster. Now, I know we've got highways representatives here. But I'm going to go back to Fiona Dunning. Fiona, if you want to introduce a colleague from County to help you answer those questions, please do.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure which one of the officers would like to respond to that that question about the highways access.
I'm happy to come in, Fiona.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Okay, so
could you just, for the benefit of the members and also anyone watching on YouTube, just explain your role at Highways, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. So my name is Mark Youngman. I'm representing the Highway Authority tonight, and I am Group Manager for Development Management in Hertfordshire County Council. So there's a few highway questions there. If I can just set the scene from our point of view, we've been involved in this site for probably a decade now, and as part of our role, we check the site against the local plan, the neighbourhood plan, and our quite recent fourth edition of a local transport plan, and also our roads in Herts. If I go straight to the most recent query about the access, so yeah, we've looked at the access. We did ask for tracking, which is one of the drawings that you had put up on the screen. There is a gradient. It's quite a steep gradient, and obviously there are some trees in the way, and it's part of a TPO. And we have conditioned and asked for reasonable gradients to be achieved, and that's part of the reason that the road takes the alignment that it does. The alignment did change over time to, I suppose, get an increased length to get up that gradient. If I can also cover some of the other points, Paul Dean mentioned that we've asked for 323k of Section 106 contributions towards National Cycle Route 11. We've also, it's not just National Cycle Route that we've asked for, it was also towards mitigation measures for Pig Lane as well in our most recent highways response. Also, Councillor Wiley mentioned the concerns about the Beldams area Haymeads. We've looked at the traffic modelling. I mean, obviously, most developments of this size do have an impact, and our job is to obviously judge against NPPF whether that's a severe impact or not, and also consider that with all the other developments that are already committed. And this being a local plan site, it's been built into our COMET model, our own traffic model at County Council for a while now. And but as to London Road, we've looked at the impacts there. There are mitigation measures that we're looking at that are listed from previous schemes, etc. And we reckon that there's I'll let my colleagues come in if I get any of this wrong, but I think it's about 29 vehicles an hour that in the peak hours. So that's in the morning peak and the evening peak. It'll be about 29 vehicles an hour that will go through that area. If they've gone north and then east, or gone east along Pig Lane, and then, like somebody was saying, into Essex and back into Hertfordshire again. And I suppose the good news is, in terms of mitigations, I'm pleased to report that we've recently started our consultation. It started on Halloween on our latest growth and transport plan for the area of Bishop Stortford, and that's on our website for consultation. So I would encourage people to take part in that process and contribute towards the measures that we are proposing within the growth and transport plan for the area, and that is a supporting document of our local transport plan. I hope I covered most things there. If there's any more about the specifics of London Road or Pig Lane, oh sorry, the scoping. Councillor Wiley also touched on the scoping of why we so quite early on, if part of the pre-app discussions, or we agree the scoping with the developer or the developer's consultant, and we have to be reasonable. We have to ask something that's reasonable. And similarly to Bishop Stortford South, we asked for traffic counts to be done at 7 junctions initially for this site. And then, because we weren't getting quite the data we wanted, I mean, people in their representations have sort of mentioned that we recommended refusal. I wouldn't say it was that simple. It was more that we didn't feel we had all the information that we needed. So it was more a request to fill some of the gaps. And in doing that, we requested that the consultant arrange surveys for 2 more junctions, either end of Pig Lane, which thankfully he did before pre-COVID, because obviously the traffic figures have been, well, surveys has been very difficult since that time. And that was, you know, that's reasonable. I mean, we you know, we can only go so far. And if I'm being completely honest, once you get over a few miles, people dissipate. You know, we think there's probably just under 2 vehicles in the peak hour. Sorry, just under 2 vehicles a minute coming out of this site in the peak hour. But by the time you get up towards Hockerill, you know, they've dissipated to use various different roads. And that's why you wouldn't necessarily want to scope too far, particularly on a site like this that's so close to the town centre, where we think it's an achievable walking distance and cycling distance to the town centre and train station and bus station, that we, you know, we can work with the developer to get the right mitigations towards sustainable transport, and with a good travel plan and with bus vouchers for the first year or so. Hopefully we can encourage all the new residents to keep out of their cars and obviously reduce the impacts that way.
Thank you very much, Mark. Now, Councillor Buckmaster had another question that must go back, I think, to Fiona. That's in relation to affordable housing.
Thank you, Chairman. And also Councillor Devonshire had a comment about the 3-storey apartment building. The affordable housing provision. So in paragraph 8.8 of the report, I do say that it carries negative weight, the fact that the indicative affordable housing unit mix provides a higher number of 1 and 2 bedroom flats compared to the SHMA. So unfortunately, and as I've said in the comments, that this is a sort of an indication or a reflection of the meeting the 40% affordable housing provision, because you know, 40% affordable housing is a significant number, and there's more emphasis on that rather than you know, having a lower number but having larger units.
Thank you, Fiona.
And sorry, Chairman, this 3-storey. Yes, sorry. So it's, as I mentioned, it is an indicative plan. I also have concerns about a 3-storey element on that corner of the site, because it is very close to a 2-storey dwelling. But it is quite blurred in the master plan process, but it just is there to show that potentially there could be a 3-storey apartment building somewhere on that western parcel.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you. Okay, through chat, I've got 3 hands. It's Councillor Page, Councillor Redfern, and Councillor Crystal. If I can take you in that order, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I've got a comment and a couple of questions. First of all, I would like to say I think that the local members and local residents have put up a very good case demonstrating the fragility of the of keeping to the plan. As far as the East Herts district plan is concerned, I can't see how we get away from not understanding that this isn't policy compliant. I accept the arguments on NPPF and the efficient use of land, but as far as the district plan is concerned, we have a definite around 150 units, and that's planning policy. I'm also concerned about the sustainability of this site, and particularly the traffic situation and access to and from the site. On page 58 of the report, under the heading Highway Impacts and Parking, there is a reference to the Highway Authority's objection. I wonder if you could, I could ask the Highways representative to put a bit of more flesh on the bones of that Highway Authority's objection, and what he believes should be done to have those objections overcome. There's one question following on from that. I don't quite understand the further assessment, including the redistribution of primary school trips. I don't understand quite what that means and where it is in the chronology of building the new primary facility. We're told that the site we're looking at will only be available for development if sufficient school capacity is provided elsewhere. I've got a question really as what is defined as elsewhere? Are we just looking at Bishop Stortford South, or are we looking town-wide? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. I think the next hand I saw through chat is Councillor Redfern.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Councillor Page has more or less said what I was going to say, that it seems to me that provision, it is overdeveloped basically, and it has strayed from the district plan. And Councillor Buckmaster also said earlier on that I know we've sort of had this answered, but I cannot accept this answer really. The affordable housing mix, and there's a statement that the strategic housing market assessment has not been met, then there's an excuse for accepting this situation because it's been made that it's already occurred in other recent developments. And that's unacceptable. This is like saying one breach of a good principle is an acceptable excuse for another breach. When are we going to start applying those rules and not excusing breaches of them? I really think this is unacceptable, very, very strongly unacceptable. And also, I've not heard from the highways people exactly what they're going to do about the cumulative effects of the traffic coming out of this development and the extra journeys to the schools, which it will probably generate. So I've heard the explanations. I'm not convinced of them, I'm afraid, at the moment. So perhaps they could do something about that for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Redfern. And then we've got Councillor Bristol.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a kind of comment and some questions. I think comment-wise, I do agree with Councillor Page very much. I'm deeply concerned by the sustainability of this site. I think the problem, one of the problems is that you're creating a new community on a brownfield site, which is good. But then there's a school, a primary school in the middle of it, which you're going to say, right, we're not going to expand anymore. And so the kids on this site are going to have to go to this new school, which, as Fiona pointed out, it's to the south. It's 400, 600, 800 meters, depending on where you're. It's about 15 minutes walk, I think, for a primary school child. And of course, we know bad weather, winter, people are going to drive. So you've gone from creating what could be a sustainable community around a primary school to pushing people onto a road which we know is incredible, has got serious problems. So my question, I think, is really to highways. I'm afraid, what exact mitigation are you proposing? What is the mitigation for this site? And that's one question. My second question is, how is it going to be funded? If I read your letter from June, and it states that the mitigation measures proposed for the Thorley London Road Thorley Hill junction are to be implemented as part of BISH 5. And I'm a bit confused why we're considering, like, I think you also say this, we need to demonstrate that this site needs to stand on its own merits, and yet we're relying on funding from BISH 5, which, whether or not it goes ahead, I don't know, but surely the permission for this site needs to stand alone and not rely on another site elsewhere. So what are the mitigation measures and how are they being funded?
Thank you. Questions put directly to highways there, so I'm very content to start with asking Mark Youngman to respond, but of course, Fiona, if you want to come in at some point, please do. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. So, yeah, it sounds like you want more details on the mitigation measures and the sustainability from Councillor Page is concerned about. So what we've got in mind to spend, well, I mean, there's two ways of delivery here. There's Section 278 works out on the frontage, which, so the junction improvement, we've seen that, and that would radii, and when the detail of agreeing the Section 278 works, we would, get tactile paving, etc., and make the walking routes into town better. But the Section 106 works, we would see that we're hopeful that by working with our rights of way section and the stakeholders like the Ramblers, etc., that we could get some improvements to the public footpath, number 40, to the west of the site. So rather than have everyone come out onto London Road, we're hopeful that we can get these connections for sustainable measures to the west and to the south to connect, so it's a more pleasant walking route, if you like, but also get cyclists onto, if we can upgrade with everyone's agreement, if we can make some improvements to public footpath 40 and upgrade it for use of cyclists, then that would do well to connect into some of the cycle routes that we're looking at from Bishop Stortford South into town. And there are studies being done, etc., on looking at the final route of National Cycle Route 11, and then to connect into National Cycle Route 16 as well, that comes from Essex and Stansted Airport. Pig Lane, we're looking at mitigation measures there to stop rat running. We're considering various restrictions that might involve a traffic regulation order, but then obviously we've got to look at we've got to model whatever that solution is to check what the impacts would be on other roads, and that's got to be done in, we'd do that in partnership with local stakeholders and residents again. London Road, there's, we know we've got some congestion on London Road, and for a while we've listed schemes along there, and bus priority has been talked about for a while, and we're, like I said, in the growth and transport plan, that's talked about giving bus priority through the signals so that they would get an instant call, a green light. If with the technology now, we can get it so that the buses have transponders and the signals know they're coming, and then they get a green light, so the buses won't have to stop. So we're looking at those type of measures. And yeah, you're concerned about each site paying for its own measures, but I mean that's, we used to have the rule of 5 with Section 106. We don't have that anymore. So we can have various schemes contributing to a larger scheme, or some schemes will, it's of a scale, it can provide its own measure. So there are measures from Bishop Stortford South that will inevitably have an impact or a benefit this far reaching, because it's on the route into town. I would ask my colleague Matt Armstrong to come in and cover anything I've forgotten, if that's okay.
Yeah, happy to. If Chairman, if you're happy for me to make the few words?
Yep, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously hearing the objections, hearing the comments, you know, I think they're very understandable in many ways, in that, you know, there's talk about increased traffic and congestion and so on and so forth. And I think, you know, the reality is there going to be an increase in vehicle traffic as a result of this development in the immediate vicinity? The answer is yes. Will that be noticeable? The answer is yes. But it's this test severe, which I know has been discussed many, many times at different planning committees. You know, many highways officers have scratched their heads over the years. And it's about how do you define that term severe? And even going back, you know, a couple of years, we were looking to case law, we were looking to appeal decisions to try and help us understand what that is. However, the latest MPPF helps us with that. So the MPPF was fundamentally, there were some very significant changes to it in 2018, more minor revisions in 2019. And it very helpfully sets out more clearly what the severe test is. So if you're happy for me to carry on just for another minute or so, I can run through our understanding of that.
Okay.
So the previous MPPF before 2018 would lump highway safety together with severe. What it's now done is separated it out. So paragraph 109 says, development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. So that sits on its own. So if there's an obvious unsafe design, the access or whatever it might be, we need to refuse that. Or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. So it's separated it out. Paragraph 110 then explains what the severe test now is. Within this context, the severe context, applications for development should give priority first to pedestrian and cycle movements, both within the scheme and with neighbouring areas, and second, so far as possible, to facilitating access to high quality transport, etc., address the needs of people with disabilities, reduce mobility, and so on. So the severe test, when you unpack it in the MPPF, relates to sustainable travel, accessibility. It's moved away from capacity and snarled up junctions. And our LTP4, particularly policy 1, supports that with its user hierarchy: pedestrians first, then cyclists, public transport users, and lastly, we consider motorised vehicle traffic. So it's understandable, you know, hearing about, we're concerned about traffic, we're concerned about congestion, but purely increase in journey times, increase in queue lengths, the capacity solutions, in inverted commas, that we would have at one time have put in place, we've moved away from that because the focus now is on actively promoting sustainable travel, facilitating active travel. So if there's an increase in queue lengths at a junction, particularly a junction that's already maybe over capacity, our increasing approach now is so be it. Now, that don't want that to sound dismissive, because of course, if you have a particularly busy junction that's highly congested, that's not nice for pedestrians. It's not a nice environment for pedestrians. It's not a nice environment for cyclists. Buses will struggle to get through. But I think it's just trying to put across the message to everyone on the panel tonight that that's the way we're looking at it. It's not, you know, your journey in a private motor car is going to be longer. You're going to be stuck in traffic longer. That may well be the case. It's how is this development actively promoting sustainable travel, and is it going to route so much extra traffic onto the road network that it's going to put off pedestrians and cyclists and so on from using the network? It's all about that modal shift. So hopefully that helps put a bit of context around the severe terminology. And I think looking at, so my colleague Lindsay McCauley, who's also on the call tonight, did a lot of the number crunching, and I'm sure can unpack some of the specifics at each particular junction. You know, what is the increase in queue length, that kind of thing. Our initial reason for refusal was on the basis of insufficient information. and the applicant eventually provided the necessary information, which is why we then withdrew the insufficient information. And primarily, the insufficient information was around the modelling wasn't sufficient, because we wanted to get a better understanding of the increased queuing and capacity issues at the junction, so that we knew what the impact would be, any adverse impact, what degree that would be on pedestrians, cyclists and public transport users. And, you know, Mark, my colleague, has already talked about, you know, what we've asked for this site, what we've secured from this site, a travel plan that actually goes over and above, you know, what would be a standard travel plan, some of the measures within that, the sustainable travel contribution for the right-of-way upgrade, some of the pig lane work. But I think the reality is that what we envisage, what we hope, is that, you know, for the majority of people who live in this development who need to travel locally to the town centre or wherever it may be, they can walk and they can cycle, and there's a good bus service. And we're not looking at schemes or designing schemes anymore with the private motor car first. It's about pedestrians, cyclists and public transport users. So I'll stop there. Hopefully that puts a bit of context on our thinking, not just on this application, but everything now that we're looking at.
Thank you very much, Matt. Now, I don't want to drown the committee with detail, but you mentioned your colleague, Lindsay. I don't know whether there is just maybe one example of some detailed modelling that you might want to share with us. I'm in your hands on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Lindsay, are you happy to unpick? Is there a particular junction that any members of the panel tonight are particularly concerned about that we could unpack for you? Or are you happy for us just to?
I would just, well, Councillor Devonshire just put his hand up in response to that. So did you have a particular junction you'd like them to talk to, Ian?
Well, yeah, I think the worst one is London Road, Thorley Hill. In my
yeah, sure.
That will be fine then. So just take that one. Just take that one, and we'll see if that helps.
Okay, Lindsay, are you happy to say a few words on the specifics of that?
Yeah, I can do that. So as part of our assessment, we looked at the net change of each of the junctions, and then obviously the modeling. The original assessment in the TA, the original TA assumed a majority of the northbound and eastbound traffic was going to go north from the site. So that in that case, the junction was showing significant queues of 30 and 35 additional vehicles in the queuing. When we asked the developer to resubmit the modeling, sorry, bear with me, it's a bunch of different documents. The queue lengths were reduced from the original a little bit, because they were taking 20 odd vehicles from the north and sending them 29 vehicles, I guess it was, from traveling to and from the north of the site and reallocating them to Pig Lane, which is the assumed scenario that would occur. So that reduces some of the queuing. The point of the modeling, when a junction gets at capacity in the junction models, any additional vehicle that enters that junction can't actually get through anymore. So it just creates the additional queue. So by redistributing the 29 vehicles to Pig Lane, you're reducing those 29, you're taking those 29 vehicles away from the queue on London Road South, which is the problem. So the development is adding queuing and will add 30 vehicles in the AM on London Road South and 35 in the PM. But as I said, that's mitigated by Pig Lane slightly, and yeah, Hockwell Junction. Oh, so I was looking at Hockwell. No, that's Thorley. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not still. Yeah, so if I just jump in briefly, I think the upshot is. So yeah, I appreciate, there may well have been some figures there thrown around which might be difficult to visualize without maybe seeing them on a plan. The upshot is that junction is already operating very near to capacity at the moment anyway. And even if this development doesn't go ahead in the 2029 future year scenario base model, as we call it, it will be notably above capacity on the London Road South arm. And so I guess it's one of the weaknesses of modelling that when a junction is already above capacity, the more traffic you add into it, exponentially, it will begin to look worse on the model. But in reality, that isn't what happens on the ground. So the accuracy of the model, once a junction reaches its capacity, reduces. So I think, I really don't want to sound dismissive, but the upshot is, this is a junction which is already at capacity in the peak hours, and is predicted to be even more so even without this development in the future. And extra traffic is being added to it, and it will still be above capacity.
Perhaps I can come in here, Mark. Matt.
Sure.
I think on this conversation, I think we all understand everybody's comments. I think the thing I'm grappling with is subject to a comment that we'll get in a minute from our legal officer, Elaine Bell.
Yeah, sure.
We have a site here. It's a brownfield site. It's in a very sustainable location for pedestrians, etc. But there inevitably, it seems to me, will be extra traffic. It seems to me that is just simply unavoidable. And I don't know that anyone in this conversation is endeavouring to say that that can be avoided. And therefore, what I'm grappling with is that if, and insofar as traffic is the issue, are we saying that for a site that's already a designated site, it can go no further because we're stuck on the traffic issue? Or are we saying, well, you just can't avoid the extra traffic? So I think now's a good time to ask our legal officer, Elaine Bell, to respond to the points made a little bit of time ago now by Councillor Warnell as to the efficacy of the master plan process. I've got David Snell putting a hand up as well. I don't know whether that means, David, you'd like to just come in with a planning officer's comment first before Elaine comments?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Yes, please do.
Can I, what I wanted to do is respond to the Councillor Page issue about numbers and the Councillor Redfern's issue about the SMAR, which will include the master plan. I hear what members are saying, and we've had the discussion before amongst members on other strategic sites where they've been concerned about numbers. I think what we would respond to that is to say that the development plan is not a cap. The numbers in the development plan are not a cap on development. The inspector who approved the development plan was very keen to make that point. And in fact, she changed the wording, the original wording, which was up to that number, to the word around, because there is the point that different designs will accommodate a different number of dwellings. This is an outline application. I must emphasize that again. And the master plan, which was approved by the council, does carry weight. We found that in the appeal on Hart 2, which members will be aware of, the inspector at that appeal considered that the master plan carried significant weight and in allowing that appeal. Again, that was significantly over the numbers in the development plan. So the inspector on that occasion gave the master plan significant weight. On the SMART issue, of course, that is a strategic target. Not every development will meet exactly the SMART, and things do change over time. The last SMART was in 2015, so it was probably out of date at the time that the development plan was drafted, but it is now 5 years old, so again, that is a strategic target. It is not something which is set in stone on every particular development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, Elaine, if you could now just deal with the master planning comments made by Councillor Warnell, please.
I beg your pardon, Chair. I wasn't aware about the question about the master planning being addressed to me. I knew there was a question about local finance considerations and whether or not the sale of the land would be a material consideration. So could I ask the member to, through you, Chair, to just repeat the question?
Well, while I've got you on the screen, why don't you take the question that you're prepared for?
Okay. Yes. Yes. The sale of, I think there was some comment about the sale of the land could be used to fund the school, and unless it is an enabling development, it wouldn't be a planning consideration. It would only be planning consideration if it was local finance through, say, Section 106 or SIL, or monies received from Minister of the Crown for given to a local authority or county council, which it doesn't sound as if this would be.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. And my understanding of the point made in relation to the master plan is that the process was not as it should have been. In fact, at the planning officer level, Fiona has responded to that and taken us through the steps that were taken in order to arrive at the master plan. And of course, in the late reps note, the point is made as a late rep, and the response in the late reps note is as follows. The steering group for the master plan had 3 meetings in 2019, I think it must be, involving key stakeholders. The minutes of the meetings have been provided to the town council, who had a representative at the 3rd meeting. In addition to the steering group, the applicant held a public exhibition in July 2019 and undertook pre-application with the Highways Authority. So that's the response in the late reps. Not quite sure if the procedure allows me to bring Councillor Warnell back. I think we're upset. Perhaps it's okay, but the head of planning here, Sarah Saunders, if you'd like to come in and comment, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think it's just important for members to remember that what's in front of them this evening is a planning application relating to specific proposals for an allocated site. The master planning process has followed the council's adopted approach to how we undertake master plans as part of policy DES 1, and it's followed that process. And in approving the master plan, obviously that process has been explained and gone through a separate council process. So what's before members is the application and the proposals, not for necessarily this committee to debate the detail of the process that master plan went through, because it has been adopted by this council, and therefore it carries weight in the decision-making process. if I can, Chairman, I would just like to come back to the point and add to what David Snell has also said in relation to kind of the allocation and the numbers in the allocation, because I think it's important to put a marker down that the approach that was taken to developing the policies and the allocations in the plan and the numbers was absolutely sound. And as Fiona mentioned, you know, as development proposals go through the process from plan making through to the planning application stage, proposals are refined, numbers can go up and numbers can go down. And David made reference to the Hart 2 appeal, and I just wanted to kind of draw to members' attention a point that the inspector did make in relation to that, because if you recall, the numbers were significantly higher for the Hart 2 proposals. The allocation in the plan is for around 200 homes, and the application that the committee refused based on the officer recommendation was for 375 homes. So there was a 175 increase that the inspector considered at a public inquiry. And in the decision letter from the inspector, he reminds us that national policy is to significantly boost the supply of housing, and that even if a housing supply exists, which we have in East Herts, it does not act as a cap for development. So yes, we're in a very good position that a number of our strategic sites are coming forward. We do have a 5-year supply of housing at the moment, but that's not to act as a cap on development. And I think the other point to mention about the allocation in the plan is that the plan needs to be read as a whole. Yes, the site is allocated, it's allocated as a strategic site, and it gives a number. But there are other policies in the plan that should be considered along that allocation as well. So if I draw your attention back to the officer's report at paragraph 8 to 11, there's reference there to policy how to relating to the density of the development, and that goes through and explains about, you know, what needs to be taken into consideration. And the indicative density is for 33 dwellings per hectare, and that's similar to the density of nearby residential developments and Bishop Stortford South development, and that it's also consistent with Chapter 11 in the NPPF. That policy how to also refers to policy DES 4, the design of development, and in looking at that policy also, criterion A refers to making the best possible use of available land by respecting and improving upon the character of a site and the surrounding area. And it goes on to give more considerations. So yes, the site is allocated, there's an allocation number. We have seen that numbers can go up, they can go down, it can change over time, but you know, they can go up and they can still be in keeping with the character of the area and not have any negative impacts or implications. And I think reading the plan as a whole is really important, particularly in relation to these proposals.
Thank you very much indeed, Sarah. Now I've got a couple more.
Sorry to interrupt, if I may. Based on where we are in the next sort of 20 minutes, then getting to a conclusion is probably quite unlikely. Do you want to consider extending the time of the meeting now, or leave it till a bit nearer to 10?
I'm just going to leave it a little bit longer, Peter. I've got 3 members I'm aware of in the queue to speak. I'm going to call on them to speak and then see where we are. If we then need to extend by some time, we'll do it at that stage. So the 3 members in the queue are Councillor Kemp, Councillor Crystal and Councillor Buckmaster, in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions. The first is, given that this is an outline plan, I would like some clarification from the legal officers. If we vote for up to 223 today, is that set in tablets of stone? Have we definitely said 223 is all right? Because it's an outline plan, I believe that we are not committing ourselves to the mix of housing, for example. So if we were to decide when it came to full planning permission that we did not feel that the proposed mix of housing was appropriate, it would not stop us from turning it down at that point. I'm not so sure about the 223, and if a proposal came forward for that which we felt was unacceptable, would our passing of this tonight give extra weight to something like an appeal? So I'd welcome clarification on that. I'd also like to pick up a point from Councillor Crystal, which was not, in my view, answered, and which I feel is very important. It concerns the Thorley Park Infant School. It's been stated it's not going to be expanded. I believe we have education representatives here tonight, and I would specifically like to ask the question, will Thorley Park Infant School be able to cope with children within its catchment area, and particularly with children on this estate, this new estate? Or would they be obliged to have to travel to a school elsewhere? If by rejigging the catchment areas, all the children on this new estate can be accommodated in that infant school, I think that would be obviously a very good thing. If not, it seems somewhat perverse and contradictory. And I think I wonder also whether any condition is required on whether the new school in Bishop Stortford South will be clearly opening before this site can go forward, although I suspect that's not possible. I'm pleased to hear about the cycle and pedestrian routes and other aspects of that sort. If it's agreed that the expansion of the school is in fact not necessary and it can cope with the future numbers, then I can see there are potential reasons for saying this site could take more houses, and it might be viewed possibly as a windfall on additional land to that envisaged in the original development plan. And finally, one very specific question. There are trees on the south side of site which are just to the north of the existing pathway. Are all of those trees going to be retained? And is that pathway then going to be available as a pathway and cycleway with a completely new road built to the north? And I apologise for the number of questions here, and it may influence our decision on whether we should extend beyond 10 o'clock.
I think they might very well do that. But let's, in that case, just try and get Councillor Crystal's questions and Councillor Buckmaster, and then I think we will have to vote for an extension of the meeting. So, Councillor Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say to Mark and Matt and the Highways team, thank you very much, and much appreciate the explanations that you provide. It's really useful to hear that. And obviously we're really kind of supportive of those aims of getting people walking. I think the idea of putting more people on a footpath is great. For me, it's a bit concerning because, of course, we've got the traffic and the pollution, the air pollution, which brings me to my question, I suppose, for Fiona. So I think page 62, 8.33, you state that there's we need an air quality assessment carried out, and that the results of that, if I read it right, could influence the number of houses that result on this site. I just wanted to sort of try just check, is that correct, and is the air quality assessment going to consider the site alone, or the site and the nearby roads? Is that the idea? And if it does, if air quality is poor, would that give an ability to reduce the number of houses, or is it just about changing boilers to all electric? Thank you.
Thank you. And then Councillor Buckmaster, and then we'll move straight to a vote, I'm afraid, to extend beyond 10 o'clock. Where you go, Councillor Buckmaster. You get your question in now.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, a point I want to raise. I think the argument about the Schmar being out of date is rather a weak argument, and maybe before we get to the final planning application. We could have an up-to-date one so that we can actually look at the actual housing need that will be current. My question really was actually carrying on from Councillor Crystal. I was obviously concerned about the air quality for the pedestrians and cyclists. I'm rather confused over your modelling and your mitigation answers. You talk about 29 cars when in fact there's 223 houses, and with the best will in the world, there'll be 223 cars. So I don't quite understand how only 29 cars are going to affect that junction and the traffic on the road. Your attitude of that, well, so be it, they have to get on with it, might be fine for highways, but I do feel I have concerns about the air quality in that area. And as Councillor Crystal said, is there going to be any modelling? Is there going to be any impact in this, and will it affect the final application, the numbers of the final application?
Thank you very much, Councillor Buckmaster. Thank you. All right, so we do need to extend this meeting beyond 10. So I'm going to propose that we just agree, and I hope this isn't too scary, an open extension beyond 10, so that we definitely have enough time to finish this conversation this evening. And if I may, I'd like to ask for a proposer. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. And seconder, I'm taking it that Ruth has seconded.
Yeah.
So
let's make extension until the meeting is finished. That's fine, if that's agreed, members.
All those in favour of extending the meeting beyond 10 o'clock until the business is covered.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not seeing any objections there. I think that's all the hands up, so that's fine. Carry on.
I saw a couple of very weary hands moving there, but anyway, well, I think that's all agreed, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just on a point of order, Chairman, if we go much beyond 10.
I'm very sorry, I talked over you slightly there, David.
I think his connection's frozen a bit there.
And I've lost you now, David. If you want to come back and make that point in a minute or two, please do. But we've got some questions now, which I think initially fall to Fiona, but of course, if the other planning officers want to come in, you may. But we'll start with Fiona, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll talk about Councillor Kemp's queries in relation to the pathway and the number of dwellings. Because it's the application, if it's approved tonight, for up to 223 means that if when the reserved matters were submitted, that the applicant demonstrated that that it was acceptable in appearance, layout, scale, and landscaping terms, which are the reserved matters, then it may be acceptable. I think that that's very unlikely, given that there is a requirement in the heads of terms, section 106, for a local equipped play area. So that is approximately 400 square meters. And I'm not sure if the master plan actually shows that site on the plan in that area proposed. So I think that it's likely that the number of dwellings will be less than 223. I can't guarantee that, but I think from just looking at it in a little bit more detail than the master plan, I think that potentially there'll be fewer dwellings than that. But that doesn't say that if for some reason a developer came in submitting the reserved matters, showed that 223 dwellings could be achieved whilst respecting the density that has been indicated on the plans and the adjoining properties. So, for example, if there were more than a certain number apartment buildings, then it's unlikely that it would be consistent with the adjoining residential developments. So I think it's something that would be assessed in detail at reserve matters. In relation to the pathway, once again, this would be, the trees will be retained and will be embellished. But I think in terms of the siting of the pathway, I couldn't say, because that would be part of the landscaping and layout details, because everything is reserved in that regard. So that's something that would be looked at. In relation to air quality, so condition 25 of the report requests an air quality assessment. Until that's undertaken and to determine whether there are any air quality impacts, it would be difficult to detail the mitigation measures. But when the application, I would suggest that the applicant would undertake the air quality assessment prior to looking at the layout and the appearance and scale and landscaping, in case that there are mitigation measures that need to be undertaken as part of the reserve matters. So yeah, that's it is required as a condition. And I don't think there was anything else. I think there was Councillor Crystal, I think, had a query in relation to the expanding the school for the education officers.
Yep. Before I ask, as I understand it, the officer from county here that relates to the schooling aspect is Christopher Martin. Before I ask Christopher Martin to comment, I'm just going to make sure that neither of our attending planning officers wish to say anything further in relation to the points raised by members. No, I'm seeing nothing moving there. So,
and just briefly, sorry to interrupt again. If we can try and hear what Councillor Andrews is going to say, if we can get in, because he had a point to make, didn't he? Some sort of point of order he was about to say, then he disappeared a bit. If we can try and get to hear what that was, if possible.
I didn't quite catch you there, Peter. If you were saying that Councillor Waldown had a point of order, I think...
No, Councillor Andrews, he was trying to say something about...
Yes, David Andrews is back with us. Let's just catch you, David. We can see you, David, but we can't hear you.
The best of all worlds.
Yeah, we think you were trying to make a point, David, and you lost your connection.
Yeah, it is rather tenuous. Just to say that if we go beyond 10:30, might I suggest that you give consideration to a short break?
Yes, that's a very fair comment. Hopefully that won't be necessary. Where are we now? Christopher Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. My name is Chris Martin. I'm a school planning officer from Hertfordshire County Council, responsible for setting the school place planning strategy for this area. As Councillor Kemp asked a question around whether the additional pupils arising from this homing would be accepted into Thorley Hill. To clarify on that point, Thorley Hill Primary School is a community school and therefore operates under the Hertfordshire County Council coordinated admissions. On that basis, we don't operate primary catchment areas. However, distance is one of the priorities when assigning admissions pupils. It should be noted that parents do have parental preference, and therefore just because a school is their nearest school does not necessarily mean that they will choose to attend it. They can choose to and do go to whichever school they assign their preferences for. I think from my perspective, by having the homes within the near vicinity of Thorley Hill and with the new entrance proposed to Thorley Hill from this development, the vast majority of pupils would be expected to attend Thorley Hill, and by virtue of being closer to the school than potentially other people that are attending the school currently would have the priority over other pupils currently. The Education Authority has endorsed the current proposals for the 1FE current Thorley Hill School and the 3FE proposed school at Bishop Stortford South. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was a very efficient answer. Okay, now we've had a long discussion about this clearly important item. I don't greatly want to limit further discussion, but we have had a lot of discussion and it is moving on. So I'm going to take this as a last look at the screen.
Chairman?
If we could just check chat to see if anybody's put their hand up in chat.
Chairman?
Yeah.
I've had a message on chat asking from the legal officer, does Councillor Kent require further confirmation from the legal officer about outlining 223 dwellings? Is he happy with the answer, or does he need more clarification on that one?
I think I was comfortable with the answer that was provided by the office, by the case officer, unless the legal officer, sorry, unless the legal officer has anything to add to that in terms of clarification.
No, Chair. I think the officer covered it very well. It is up to, so it's a maximum of 223 dwellings, and it is at the reserve matters stage that you'd actually see whether or not it is going to work with that number of dwellings, and you're not then tied to that because it is a maximum. So members need not concern themselves about being stuck with 223 no matter what. Hopefully that makes that clear.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Now I think in response to my final call for hands, we think we've spotted Tim Page. So Tim, if you have a final.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. It's a sort of personal point of order. At approximately 9:25, I was frozen out for a minute. So presumably you want me to abstain?
I think did you say for just 1 minute, Tim?
Yes, just 1 minute.
I think my reaction to that would be that.
Which actually is quite a long time.
That would not need you to abstain, but let's ask Legal Officer Elaine Bell.
Chair, if the councillor, I must admit, I didn't see that. I saw the screen had gone blank. As long as he heard the presentation, I don't know whether when he said it was frozen, it was just a visual and he couldn't hear either. If it was during the course of the planning officers presenting the report, one would assume that members would read the papers before the meeting, and so as long as he had already been satisfied that he's read the papers, it wasn't during the course of one of the speakers to the application, then I think as long as the member's happy that he's heard all the other representations and obviously read the report, then I don't think there's any need for him to abstain.
Okay, Tim, so there's a
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you need to exercise a judgment, but you've heard the views of me and our legal officer. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so on
Thank
that, oh, you're very welcome. On that final trawl for hands, I think that was it from Tim. Just checking chat. Got nothing in chat.
You're okay.
Yep. I've got nothing. I've got nothing in chat.
Chairman,
Yes, Sally Newton. Yes.
you will have noticed, unfortunately, my screen went blank also briefly. So are you going to leave the judgment to me as to whether I continue to vote or abstain?
In the nicest way, Sally, I think you should just take note of the advice that you heard given to Tim.
Yeah.
And assess that against your own circumstances and form a view.
Okay.
Which I think is the correct approach.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, thank you. Okay, right, well, we've had a very long discussion in relation to this item at Bishop Stortford. I think I might summarise what my sense of the debate is. So points have been made for and against and for. But I think the things that the position I've reached at the end of the conversation is that Firstly, I think this is quite important, that the master plan is adopted by East Herts District Council. It is a part of the fabric of East Herts District Council's policy framework, and it exists, and we must acknowledge it. And that has established the principle of development. It seems to me that the next important issue is that, as has been emphasised many times, this is an outline application. It's for the development of what is a brownfield site. It's for up to 223 units. My understanding of the advice that's been given is that because if we give outline permission this evening, it does not automatically follow that 223 units will necessarily arise from the ground. There are further areas of consideration that will be gone through. My understanding, and I am looking at officers when I say this, my understanding is that if we were to give this permission, subsequently there will be work done on air quality and air quality assessments. And that will have a bearing on what might turn out to be the actual development at the end of the day. I believe that's a correct understanding. I'm just looking for a nod, please. See Sarah Saunders nodding. We've heard from the County Council as to their approach in relation to the County Council's current transport policy, LTP4, which is that there's a hierarchy, pedestrians at the top of that hierarchy, and car users are at the lower end of the hierarchy. I think we can feel that that's been factored into their thinking and approach to this development. And it does seem to me that if, insofar as this site is designated for development, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to see that any development cannot present issues in relation to traffic. And I think it seems to me that the LTP4 provides the way through those, at least as far as concerns the County Council highways engineers. And I think we might also just remember that the neighbourhood plan, which I think it's been acknowledged is superseded by the district plan, the neighbourhood plan did contemplate between 220 and 250 units on the site. And I'm just looking at officers for reassurance that I've understood that correctly. Thank you very much. I see officers nodding. So it seems to me that's where we are on this conversation. And I think the time has come to take a vote. So I'm looking to see if I have a proposer for the application as it is made.
Happy to propose, Chairman.
Thank you so much, Councillor Andrews. And I've just got to find my piece of paper. Here we go. I've got the right piece of paper now. So I have a proposer. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Kemp.
Councillor Kemp. Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp.
Can I just be clear, Chair? Is that on both elements of that recommendation? Because there's two little bits to it.
Yeah, I'm prepared to propose both. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And it's the same applies to you, Councillor Kemp. Thank you, and thank you, Peter. Okay, so I have a proposer and a seconder for this following application, which is 320-0151 OUT, outline planning permission, all matters reserved apart from access for the erection of up to 223 dwellings with associated access, parking, landscaping and vehicular access at Bishop Stortford High School, London Road, Bishop Stortford. All those in favour, please show a hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just going to the second screen. 10, 11, 12. Yeah, I've got everyone there.
Thank you very much. You can drop hands now. I think that is everybody, but I should nevertheless ask if any.
No, hang on a second.
That's fine. That's fine, Carolyn. Do we have any votes against?
1, 2. So that's okay. That's 2 against. So it is carried.
Well, just for completeness, do we have any abstentions? No.
Don't think so.
Okay. That therefore means that we have just debated and agreed to give the following permission in relation to application 320-0151 OUT. We've agreed to give outline planning permission, all matters reserved, apart from access, for the erection of up to 223 dwellings with associated access, parking, landscaping and vehicular access at Bishop Stortford High School, London Road, Bishop Stortford. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for that debate. It was quite long. I think everybody raised very good points. I'd like to thank all the officers who attended, particularly those who've come from outside the District Council. So that's the Hertfordshire County Council representatives. It's been a late evening and we're very grateful to you for being here and answering our questions. So if I might now just as quickly as I can move on. Item 6, which appears on in the agenda in the paper pack at page 123. This is items for reporting and noting. All I need is just an acknowledgement that we have noted these items. Just for good order, I'll take a proposer. Anybody would like to propose? Who hasn't proposed so far this evening? I'm the singer. I don't think you proposed yet, Councillor Ruffles, so you can be the proposer. Need a seconder? I think Carolyn Redford. Well done. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
It's fine, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 7 is urgent business. I don't believe we have any urgent business, but if I may just keep you for 1 minute, I'd just like everybody to note that the Bishop Stortford item included, in effect, a request from the NHS for some Section 106 money. I think all members of this committee, certainly the longer standing members, will know and remember that over time we've registered that the NHS has not always taken the trouble to ask for Section 106 contributions. And I think you know that not least because of the initiative taken by this committee, representations have been made in certain quarters. So I'm extremely pleased to see that in relation to the Bishop Stortford application this evening, we have had a request from the NHS for a not insignificant amount of Section 106 money. So I'd just like to say thank you to this committee and the previous DMC group for taking the trouble to make those representations through to the National Health System.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank you very much, David. You obviously go back. So with that, and with thanks to you all for your stamina, at 8 minutes past 10, I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you all very much indeed.